Welcome back to the ANF Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to do a breakdown of the 2025 recruiting class, and the way we're going to break this down is through a draft. We're going to focus on their NFL potential, their ability to become an All-American at Iowa, or maybe just a starter as a freshman or sophomore, someone that can jump out and contribute right away. We have Eliot Clough with us today, really talented guy, our favorite guest we've ever had on the show. Might be our only guest.
I was going to say, wait a minute.
Our only guest we've had on the show, but we really enjoyed this episode last year. And we're going to let Eliot kick us off. He'll be the first to draft and kind of also give your first impressions of this draft class.
Yeah, so one thing we talked about last year was that 24 class, it was loaded with 3 stars, very typical Iowa class. This year's class, at least on Rivals, loaded up with, 4 4-stars, right? You got Yosei, you got Burt Gouger, you got Carson Cooney, you got Thomas Meyer. Meyer and Epinesa, both 2 Rivals 250 guys, so top 250 recruits in the country. Typical, other than that group, really. I mean, you've got guys like Olante Dean, who could become something. You've got guys like Brad Fitzgibbon, who's he's going to be a 1-tech, right? But other than that, I mean, projects. Drew McPherson is kind of unique, but this class is kind of a little bit more star-studded than what I was used to. So a little bit different.
Yeah. I'd say going through my top 10 draft picks, if I expect them all to start at some point in their career, and if they do get beat out, they're going to get beat out by somebody that might have NFL potential. And I think that's where you sit as a class 10 deep of possible contributors when they're juniors or seniors. They're at a great spot, and they're sitting at their kind of standard 40th, ranking nationally. And, generally that's actually around 20 to 25. It's just the way they develop, the way they, bring guys to the NFL. So looking forward to this draft and really excited to get rolling.
Yeah, let's get going.
Let's do it. So shocker of a first-round pick, you guys. Yosei Epinesa.
So brave.
Yeah, very brave. Who else would you pick first overall in this class? There was no mystery. We were talking about doing this beforehand, doing the draft beforehand, and I was like, I thought about texting you guys and just saying, first one's not going to be a surprise. We're kind of already there. But I mean, the pedigree, the physical tools, the experience against national competition, being in the All-American Bowl. I mean, Rivals had him super low and closer to 200 in the rankings, or maybe 150, because he didn't have that national competition of going to the Rivals 5-star camps and competing against these guys. And then he goes into the All-American Bowl and is just short of a 5-star for us, or for those at Rivals. So physical tools you can't teach. Explosion, length. I mean, I re-listened to the podcast that we did for the 25 class, and it was you could put a bear in football pads and then put Epinesa across the back, and you've got Yosei. Just a guy that will terrorize whoever he's facing especially at the high school level. Destroy dudes. Another guy that has a real shot at getting on the field early, considering the depth at defensive end right now. Would not surprise me if he's in the rotation like his brother was as a true freshman. I mean, there's just nobody in this class. While I mentioned it being star-studded, Yosei's on another level, right? It's just you can't pick anybody else, especially with AJ, especially with Epi. That just the pedigree and the physical tools, and the explosion is the thing that pops out to me most, and just the violence with which he plays. You can't take anybody else besides Yosei here.
You can go.
Yeah, I think it's a great pick, and I want to add much onto it. I think you did a great job breaking it down, but his first play on his film it's a peak Epinesa. He's quadruple teamed, and that's a high school move. It is all right, we have a 3rd and 10 or whatever. We have to convert this. 4 guys block him. And to be a high school coach and have him bust through 4 different players and then make a strip sack, I think it was, you just that's just him in playing high school football. He's built already a junior at Iowa, and it's such an important position for Iowa to develop as well, to have a 270, 280-pound DN that can stop the run and also generate a pass rush. And it's what Iowa needs to run this 4-3 scheme. So I think it's a great first pick, super technical guy. I think Epi has done a great job developing him, and, hard to go anywhere else with the first overall.
Yeah, that's why I
pick.
think he has a good chance to get on the field really quickly, is just because his technical abilities can be, exactly where you want it to be. You could see his long arm is, that heavy-handedness at the D-line level. He's going to be probably a top 2 or 3 strongest guy in the team the minute he walks onto the field, especially at DN too.
Yeah.
At least within that position. But he is That usually takes a long time to develop at the end, where you have guys who sit for 2 or 3 years because they just can't match an O-lineman's physicality. But from his freshman year, he'll be ready.
Yeah. All right, I think you're up for pick number 2.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit of a curveball. I had him a lot lower, 7 or 8 going into today, and then just thinking about how he's going to fit into the scheme and what his competition within the room. I think C.J. Bell out of Connecticut. We don't really have a lot of tall corners who move exceptionally well within the room. You have Godfrey from last year, who he has the physicality tools that Phil likes to see. You didn't really see the bendiness out of him, the speed at the top end. They put him in press man, and he looks incredibly comfortable at 6'1". Granted, he weighs 170 pounds. I think that's going to be the big question mark for him is once you put on 15 to 20 pounds, how well do you move? But from his timing and length, there's the reason that he has the Penn State and Notre Dame offers because he can play press man comfortably. And what Phil really likes to do with talented corners who have size like that is you can run this mock bluff press that if he's going to stay up tight to you, you have a really good chance of disrupting timing off the line. But then he's going to be fast enough and long enough to not get beat over the top in those 1-on-1 cover 3 scenarios. And letting Phil play how he wants to play, having a long arm guy who can get off blocks at the point of attack. And then he's not, I wouldn't call him the most physical corner I've seen on film, but I think if he gets there with weight wise, he doesn't seem like he shies away from contact. So that's, I think, given his skill set, I think an early riser in the 2 deep is possible next year. It's all just going to come down to weight. I don't expect him to make a breakthrough this year, but I think in the long run, with the amount of coaching he's going to receive from Phil, I think he's going to, really be a good player for Iowa.
It's someone he can invest in, in year 2. And I think watching his film, the first thing that jumped out to me player-wise was Matt Hankins. It's such a similar film to Hankins where wasn't a lot of playmaking in it in terms of showing off his ball skills and maybe housing a pick. But the coverages they put him in were so aggressive. I mean, he's in press man on the far side of the field with 60 yards of space behind him, and he always ran with them. And sometimes he would, break wrong with the receiver would shake him for a second, and he would recover so quickly. And I think you bring up the length at 6'1". This is a surprising pick, but the more you broke it down, we were texting last night, I was like, I kind of like it because that room is wide open. And they are asking for someone to come in there and be a long, rangy safety, and a corner. And I think Phil is definitely able to invest early. He's
might
not
just
gonna
be
afraid of it.
it might be like a 2-year grow process, though. I just don't know if the weight's going to come fast or easy. So that's where you just might be patient on that.
We may need a slow-mo of my reaction in there, Nate, if you can plug that in. Because he was about 7'8" for me.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, the physical tools, the length, we were just talking about TJ Hall before we started recording, right?
Mm-hmm.
He has all those physical tools. If he puts it together this year, then you got something. And it's a similar thing to CJ Bell here. And the fluidity is big here. Not a ton of the ball skills that you see on the film, but when you do see them, I like it. I like it a lot, what he's able to do there. I mean,
he's a true corner. He's not like the converted wide out,
Yeah, it's a Hankins.
Yeah, it's very much a Matt Hankins setup where he's, prototypical, but you don't see that level. I don't know where he'll get from an NFL perspective if he doesn't develop ball skills on top of it. That's where he really needs to take a leap, but still.
He fell into Iowa's lap big time.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the Penn State, the Notre Dame, and had he committed early on or really wanted to be there, he probably could have. But they all got their guys and backed off, and it was down to Rutgers and Iowa at the end, and he got him on there. They got him on campus for an official, and of course, Iowa's gonna
close the deal there.
Right. So committed on as official, but yeah, very easily could have ended up at. He had a ton of offers. I mean, you look at this: Wisconsin, Tennessee, Penn State, Notre Dame, Minnesota, Boston College in there too. So
And also junior year film. We didn't have senior year film on Huddle, so that maybe takes another leap on film. And I think watching junior year play that well, yeah, I definitely see it.
I haven't heard a ton of him or about him out of spring ball, early enrollee, but I do think it's because of the lack of size. There's only so much you can do as an early enrollee, just starting to figure out college football.
100%.
It's very easy to be overwhelmed as a college freshman, let alone enrolling early.
Yeah,
so.
100%. All right, I think I got back to back here. This one, I think it's going to be tough, but I think my top 6, I feel so comfortable drafting any of them. But Alante Dean didn't have Huddle film. And I was like, I literally had no film in my notes. And then on Twitter, He had his huddle
I'm
film.
glad you
Or his-
found it because I knew where it was at.
Yeah.
I didn't think about
helped you.
And I watched
asking
it. I watched it about 4 hours ago, and I was like, "Oh, sweet! I at least get to watch this. Maybe I'll draft him." And then every single play, I just kept getting more excited and more excited. And that's like what I draft on. Is if I see 10 straight plays, 15 straight plays, where you just watch explosion, you watch playmaking, and he does everything. He's playing safety, he's playing receiver, he's playing running back, quarterback, and they're all different plays too. It's like, oh, here's a strength play, here's a speed play, here's him diving, accelerating, and making a diving catch with great hands, and he's doing it at 6A Florida. And he looks like the best player on the field. I think this is like a Monty Hooker level type film. Entringer is going to be a great player this year. I think he looks a lot like Entringer. He's going to get on the field early too. The safety room is wide open. And you could see Wampa moving on, Entringer moving on, and Lumpmer moving on in the next 2 years. And Lante Dean has then safety, strong safety, or cash he can play. And he can play both. He's athletic enough. So I love getting this guy at third. I think he's at NFL potential. I think he could be a Monty Hooker, Geno Stone type, where it's just the physicality's there. He's already big enough. He's 6'1", 205. He doesn't need to put any more weight on. And when you're watching him in high school, you see his speed already. He's playing at his playing weight. He's at a junior weight for a safety at 6', 6'1". So I think really excited to see him how he turns out and happy to get him at 3.
If there was no Yosei, he would have been my first overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys remember this. Right when Iowa offered Dean, and it was pretty apparent that they were going to be involved. Armwood's just like a powerhouse.
Yeah.
And if Iowa gets involved with those guys, generally they stick around because Armwood sends a lot of guys to Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I did when I saw his film was send it to you guys. So I don't know if you remember, but you saying all the things you said made me feel like, oh, I know ball a little bit. Because you guys just know the intricacies a little bit more than I do, even though this is my full-time job. But this was one that I saw the film. I was like, Iowa has to get this guy. They almost didn't. I don't know if you guys
Some
saw
late
that.
teams coming.
Louisville came in last second on signing day and tried to get him, but stuck it out. Tyler Barnes is on the phone with him until like 2-3 in the morning.
Great job.
So to get him back, I mean, Dean is future strong safety, cash, and there's going to be some real competition at both of those positions. Marcello Vitti in this 26 class, you guys,
Really good.
Ooh,
Yeah, it looks like a Castro clone.
100%.
Sebastian.
Yeah.
That's a great slip.
So there's going to be some real competition in both of those spots.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what that position's become, is a very marketable position within college football. You think about the amount of NFL players they've had coming out of that. Really I had him at 2 for, almost this entire process because I saw all the same things. The hands, I think, and the receiver ability. When you talk about that cash position where they got to flip their hips and get their head around, you talk about making picks, that's what really gets you to that next level. But I think the only concern I have with him is speed. He's definitely a faster guy, especially at 6', 205. Like you're at your playing weight, so you don't have to really worry about that extra weight slowing you down. But if he runs anywhere low 4.5s, high 4.4s, like he will be an NFL draft pick.
I think even if he's at 4.6, he's just so dense.
Yeah.
For
Safety
being a
build,
safety.
it's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he hits like a wagon.
Yeah.
Speaking of his athleticism, he told the staff on his official visit that he wants to play both sides of the ball.
That was my notes.
Okay.
Like, you can play this guy both ways. Like,
If they didn't do it with Cooper DeJean,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
like
I can see a little like Wildcat. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
That's something easy. You put him in the backfield.
Sure.
Teach him
But
5
still,
plays.
like
Yeah.
Kirk with Cooper, you played Cooper both ways and got hurt.
right.
Kirk-
So
Kirk's
now
just-
they're definitely not going to do
Yeah,
it.
imagine Kirk laying down in bed that night. It's like, oh my god,
I've never done this.
I've never. All right, move on.
Yep. Pick number 4. This is another film that you just, it's what, like I said, when I get excited about guys, it's why I want to draft him high. Brad Fitzgibbon really surprised me. I saw his recruiting background and where he was ranked, D tackle play. It's not something Iowa's been really nailing in the recruiting portal or recruiting process. We haven't brought in a true freshman D tackle that's really kicked ass on the last 3 years. And this guy's film, there's just 3 straight plays. He's 6'3", 280, so he's already has playing weight at the D tackle position. He probably put on 15, maybe get to 305. But he's quick and he's explosive and he can hit full speed really quickly. There's a play about 50 seconds into his highlight film where he's in the middle of the field. It's a pass rush. There's a dual threat QB who's about 5'11", probably a pretty quick kid. Scrambles left, and Fitzgibbon's got to run 40 yards to get him just to the sideline. And he hits full speed within 2 strides at 280. And he just books it and meets him right at the line of scrimmage. Like takes the angle perfectly and rips him down. And at the very end, he reaches his right arm up and tries to punch the ball out. like comes with the hand of God. Like, and it was like, that is the exact play I want to see from my D tackles, because his film shows explosion, lower body, plays through his hips, and really strong in his upper body as well. But you have to have a huge motor, and you gotta love to play football. That's the only way to play Iowa D tackle, because you are double teamed every single play at the one tech. You gotta be tenacious, and you gotta just constantly fight. And I think this, once again, the D tackle room is such a room that could be wide open in 2 years. I think Hawthorne's going to be there, but the other three that are going to play this year will be graduating. So I think we'll see him next year. And I think
we'll see him in the two deeps, but we've had this argument where I think you really want 22 and 23-year-old kids playing on the interior for D tackle, because it's a
21
catching,
at least,
it's a catching position. You're playing behind the O-line's timing, so then that development of that really subtle, heavyweight movement, you can compare it a lot to college wrestling, where the heavyweights are usually juniors and seniors, because all those subtle shifts in weight is everything. That's like a very technical spot. So I love him. I think he's awesome.
To call out one more play too, they drop him in coverage on one play
at 280.
At 280,
he looks like a dancing bear. Like,
he's moving. There's a linebacker who's like 210 next to him, and he's moving better than him. And then he like runs down the quarterback. I'm like, this guy can move at 280 in high school. And I just see like something we desperately needed to. We needed the
last 10 years. D tackle recruit, he's up in the top 3 for sure.
Yeah,
like he's
best since Graves.
Yeah,
for sure.
Is another guy that I had a little bit lower. But we talked about Yosei, the violence. Like that's what you get with Fitzgibbon too. He's there's not a stat for this, but it's called F in the play up, and he's one of those guys.
100%.
So I like the pick too, and talking to him. The first conversation when he got offered by Iowa, he had Michigan State, Kansas, all these other
Wisconsin.
Midwest schools involved. And then Iowa comes in, and that first conversation, he's a Hawkeye, future cast, like one of those.
Really?
You could just tell. Out of Chicago Marist, a really solid program, out of a really good league.
And that's what he was making such explosive plays against a really good conference. Like that was the most surprising part. He's moving 270-pound guards and picking them up. It's like if he was doing that to Iowa,
he plays through guys. He do 2 gaps. Like he's really technical already, and he's going to play his playing weight so quickly too. So that's going to be a huge advantage for him.
If you guys get a second at some point in time, look at his Instagram reels, because he shares his workouts with his trainer, who puts them on and then he reposts them. And like. I'd be like, wow, like holy shit, So really impressive.
Yeah.
Now me, correct?
Back to Connor.
Sorry. Yep.
I'll go Carson Cooney, who I've had as high as 2 on this one as well. A guy, I think the only reason I downgraded him is just because of the arduous road he's going to have ahead to start. You think about the class ahead of him in linebackers. There's 3 guys that are likely going to play at some point. Above that, Keeter coming back is going to be a real stymie at middle linebacker. But
I'm getting doubtful on that, by the way.
Yeah.
Him coming back to football,
Really?
just with the health and I mean, he's elite wrestler, right?
Exactly.
So sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. But you could tell he has been watching a lot of Josie Jewell film. The way he carries himself on the field, like I think his play style obviously mimics him, but the way for him to put his face through guys is just such a middle linebacker talent within the Iowa system. I don't think he's going to be a guy that looks great outside of the tackles. Like certainly has the speed, closing ability, all that, and size. But where he's really special at is sifting through blocks, trusting his eyes, making quick reactions. And then when he cuts it loose, it's, he's going. And you see so many times where he'll lay out, with 2 or 3 yards of space and, wrangle some guy. It's like, man, you just really see him fitting into that Josie Jewell mold where anytime he touches a guy, the play is done. Like we're going to, and like within Phil Parker's defensive scheme, where it's all about 3 to 2 yard gains. And it's all about how quickly can you get the guy on the ground the minute that you guys make contact and building that wall. He just seems like the perfect guy to build a wall with in the middle. And I think he's going to move so well and just plays with such ferocity. It's like his time will come. It just might take a long time.
There's film you watch and you go, that's an Iowa Mike linebacker.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
Carson Cooney.
Exactly.
Like it's like you mentioned, gets a hand on you, plays over. So Illinois wanted him really bad. It was down to the wire. Another conversation that I had where immediately afterwards, future cast him to Iowa. I think he's gonna be really good. Seth Wallace is gonna love him.
Yeah. He's just wired the right way.
Yep.
There's 2 plays on his film. One is a gap blitz, 15-yard completion behind him for a first down. He gets off. He's now in the backfield, essentially runs 15 yards backwards and tackles the guy downfield. Like that motor you need at middle linebacker, that's what he has. And then there's a play, like a swing pass out to the left. Once again, A-gap blitz. The guy's going to get tackled. He's like being brought down. And he just dives and spears a guy in the back of the neck. You're like, that's someone who just wants to hit. Like he gets on the field, lights himself on fire, and then like wants to play hard.
Yeah.
Like it's just awesome to watch.
The one word that you guys use a lot for Mike's, thumper.
Yes.
I've been using that nonstop the last year with Carson Cooney.
Yeah.
So yeah, excellent fit.
All
Me?
right. Yeah, I think
Okay.
yep.
Actually, me this time. Speaking of linebackers, Burke Goucher.
Yeah.
This is an easy one. Which, by the way, we didn't get to see either one of them at the spring practice, which is unfortunate. Both hurt. Cooney in a boot. Goucher like wrapped his leg and then had a brace on it. So a little nervous about that. I mean, yeah, they'll be fine. But Goucher's fluid athlete, exactly what you want at your will. Played safety. Like you just move him down and he's an athlete and can blitz and can do former quarterback too.
Yeah.
Iowa loves those guys. Big hitter. He and Cooney are like this already. They're roommates.
That's awesome.
They're gonna be that's gonna be a really, really fun duo to watch. It's similar to a Weiskopf to me, where he's from Sycamore, Illinois, same as Neiman's. Yes. And their coach told me that he's a better athlete than both of them.
I believe it.
Yeah,
So
I think that's true.
Yeah.
It's close. I mean, Ben was the biggest freak ever.
deer.
But,
Yeah.
But that's Goucher, just that plus 20 pounds at the time.
Right. And getting to see him play both positions this year. I went out to where's Northern Illinois located?
Macomb?
No, not Macomb. That's Western Illinois.
DeKalb.
I went out and watched them play, and they played against another team that has a wide receiver that's committed to Illinois now, Davon Grant. And Burke was it was really close as to who the best athlete. Well, Burke was a better athlete. Davon was damn good at wide receiver, but Burke, it's just like that's different when you watch him, right? And being able to do it at a high level at quarterback and at safety. And like it's similar to Weiskopf in that you put him at safety because he can diagnose things and just bam, he's at the ball. So I think this combination of him and Cooney is going to be could be special. The thing that was mentioned about linebackers, he's got Buffington, he's got Reese, he's got Weiskopf ahead of him. That's the hard part. We might see Buffington this year.
Yeah. We were kind of kicking that around.
Between Jaden Harold, Jaden Montgomery ahead of him, it might be like a linebacker by committee just because that group of three guys is going to be so good. I had a source tell me about Reese the other day that it was like, I don't know that he really knows what he's doing, but he's a monster out there. So
that was a crazy spot.
We took
last
him
year's draft. Yeah.
Our third linebacker we took, we're like, he's going to start one day.
Right.
But it's just, a matter of when. We did a bit on it last year, but the run of linebacker recruiting, there's 10 deep right now that could all, make their way into the league. Not all of them are going to be top 6 draft picks, but all are going to have UDFA opportunities. All are, side positionally, ready. So it's going to be a hell of a group.
I think Weiskopf and Goucher. You got Weiskopf last year in this draft.
I did too.
And you got him late too, kind of around the same area. And it's like, man, it's probably the two purest athletes in both classes. And it's hard to evaluate them on film because they're playing safety. So the first thing is just do no harm. But if those guys played middle linebacker in high school, it'd be interesting how their film would have been different. Would they have that more anticipation play?
You had one rep of Goucher in his huddle where he got to play middle, and it was just quick violence. It's like, okay, that's where you're meant to be.
Exactly.
Me again?
I think so. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is where it starts getting tough.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's tough for you guys. It's tough for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with one that I've heard quite a bit about this spring, and that's Nathan McNeil. Very under-recruited. Had an offer from Arkansas State and Rhode Island, and then Liddell Betts saw his film and was like, okay, he's going to be a Hawk. Very explosive. Like you put the ball in his hands and it's a threat to score every time on punt return, on kick return, as a receiver and as a running back. I had a source describe him to me as lightning in a bottle. And he's getting reps out. He's taking advantage. Brevin Dahl didn't participate much this spring. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there as far as health, but I'm assuming he's going to be fine by August. But McNeil has been getting a lot of reps at running back, and that's still with Jazz Patterson, Kamari Moulton, TJ Washington ahead of him, and Xavier Williams,
right,
too. And he's still getting a ton of reps. I mean, you guys should have seen him in the spring game. there weren't a ton of plays where he got touches, but when he did, it's like, oh, that's what the source was talking about, being lightning in a bottle. He's TJ Washington coming up here, who I think is going to have a pretty big season. It's a similar comp. I love McNeil. I think he's going to be really good. And if anything, if he does see the field at all this year, it'll probably, I don't know if he will, but he's, like I said, threat score every time he touches the ball, third down back kind of situation. But I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I think it's when he first committed and you see the offer list, it was like kind of shocking.
Like, what?
It was like, what the hell? And it was like the same thing with Moulton, was 5'6", from the South. Like, you expect those guys to be well recruited. They're right in the hotbed of SEC. Like, so we missed on Moulton.
FAMU, like all those schools down there didn't touch him. So weird.
Yeah. And so I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. Betts clearly had an eye. He was on an absolute roll in running back recruiting. So you take a closer look on this guy, and he doesn't have that crazy breakaway speed. He's not the biggest guy, but he is just a natural runner. And it's like, I can't remember what rap song it's from, but slippery. Literally every time I watch him, it's like, this guy is so smooth, and he just gets out.
His football timing is incredible. I think that's what you have to look at for these D1 running backs is a lot of guys have size and speed, but timing your cuts and knowing when to cross face is everything. And that's what, and then you mix in the receiver skills. So you think about this condensed set that Lester runs, there's going to be this arrow route that's going to be a lot more popular because last year you didn't have with Jazz and KJ, they weren't the best receivers, but this arrow route you can combo off of this condensed set where they can come with pace outside. I see him and Terrell eventually like make it an entire game out of that. And then you have that pressure that it creates on the outside, and then there's a Texas route off of that. And I think in time, he's just going to be a versatile back. The guy out of Minnesota, I can't think of their
Rodney Smith.
Well, their current running back. Is it?
I know
receiver back to running back.
Who you're talking about.
Every Minnesota back for the last 5 years looks like this guy. Just a dense dude who can move side to side really well.
Yeah, but it honestly feels a lot like a go for running back, where it's like the guy just knows how to be slithery. Like on the interior, you talked about weight and height being probably an issue about surviving a long time, but if he can continue to add weight, he seemed comfortable on the interior within the tackles. Like he can definitely be a guy who can cross you up, and that's really how you become a high level D1 back, is just making people miss in really small spaces and falling forward. And I think that's where he's going to be another playmaker in this team. And we're really at a junction where Iowa has like 10 playmakers. When was the last time you had a running back room and a wide receiver room where you can sustain like 4 or 5 injuries and throw out a competitive team?
Definitely. I think you're up next, or
yeah. This is tough because I want to go one of the tight ends. And I would consider Mason Woods kind of one. I think he ends up at receiver, but I will go with Eli Johnson. And I really like Meyer. I don't think this is an indictment of Meyer. There's an argument that Meyer is actually the better pick because he fits more of a mold of what Lester likes to do right now, where he's going to be a better wham back. He's a little shorter guy, a little squattier, definitely an ox strong. But Johnson just has that ability to, he's first off a very fluid athlete, straight line, like has real ability to get behind you. I think within that real wheel route game that Lester likes with his tight ends, I think he's going to fit into more of that Estranga build where you're not going to want to probably play him every single down with the other better blocking tight ends, but he'll be a guy that can get behind you. And then his ball skills are incredible. Route running is really good. Reminds me of like a poor man's Laporta. Wasn't obviously played receiver in high school, but I think because there's just no receiving tight ends on the team right now. Like you kind of had a full clearing out. Granted, Ostranga's that you were receiving threat, but you've had Vanderbush leave, you've had
Lieber leave,
Hoffman leave, Lieber leave. Like there's really a realm for a guy to be kind of snuck onto the field in a third down scenario who they don't know how good of an athlete he is, and all of a sudden he hurts you deep. And that's where I think it won't be this year, but I think maybe in the next coming years we'll see him make his way onto the field as a receiver, and that's why I think he's going to beat out Meyer when it comes to original playing time.
Yeah,
but Meyer's a stud too. So
yeah, I think for Eli, he looks so similar to Hoffman, who went second overall in this draft last year, and it's just I think the burnout of the athletic tight ends has scared us away from drafting him, and he has film that. If you told me he was a 3rd or 4th round draft pick one day, I'd be like, yeah, of course. He's 6'5" and he moves like he's, 6'1", 180. Like he has just absolute fluidity at the top of his routes. It's the physicality that's going to be the question mark. In a program like Iowa, you don't want that physicality question mark.
Stringer kind of got that there. Like he's still got on the field even not being that great. He's improved a lot, but
exactly, he has to just prove it out.
Yeah.
Like it just wasn't a part of his film of he had good defensive reps, but it wasn't like I'm putting my face through somebody, which is what tight end has to be. And it's. My next pick would be, Thomas Meyer. And you're splitting hairs here. Meyer's much more north and south runner. He's not like Eli, where you have this,
Bendy.
really bendy, fluid athlete. But then the vertical of Meyer as well. You see, I think he has a dunk against Solon this year in his basketball highlights, and it's just baseline, gather step off 2 feet and hammers it. And he has like a baseline view of it. He's got a 40-inch vert, and he's 6'4", and he's going to be, and he was a second-team All-State D end as a sophomore. So he's clearly strong. And so it's like that inline blocking tight end. He's fit the mold of what, the last 3 tight ends have kind of turned out. Ortworth and Ostranga.
He reminds me a lot of Ortworth, yeah.
And Burt. It's like those 3 guys are kind of like always beating out the more athletic ones, and he's going to be a really good inline blocker. The only concern here is he's not the most fluid guy, fast guy. We didn't say senior film, but what happens when he puts on 30 pounds? Does he really slow down? And now is he only a red zone threat? Is he only, a kind of a high pointing tight end? Or does he still have the movement to get open? So I think that's where it's surprising. I mean, with Eli and Meyer going this late, tight ends at Iowa, both had good films, both had great recruits, and we're drafting them, pretty late in the class. It just speaks to how deep this class is.
Johnson, first of all, coming out of a scheme where they ran the ball a lot, so he's been an inline blocker for a good portion of his football career. Meyer, a guy that was between Iowa and Iowa State towards the end, and Iowa State wanted him to be a defensive end. Meyer was another guy that was very much nationally recruited. I mean, Miami offer, like
A&M.
That's right. That's telling. Meyer was probably, I don't know if one of the best 2-way players in the state this last year for Clear Lake. I would say it's almost a travesty that they didn't make it to the Dome, these are both picks that 3, 4, 5 years ago would have gone significantly higher. Maybe last year would have gone significantly higher. None of these guys, believe it or not, they got 3 tight ends in this class between these 2 and Mason Woods, who you mentioned might be a receiver. People have talked about him flipping to defense.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. He's just one of those tweener guys that could do a bunch of different things. And never really played inline tight end in high school. They always split him out to play wide receiver because he's just one of the better athletes on the field.
Yeah.
You have Jack Wallace, St. Thomas commit. Speaking of Minneapolis, St. Thomas commit, throwing him the ball. So, it's awfully interesting to have 3 tight ends in this class, and then they go this late, and none of them enrolled early, which is kind of interesting too.
Yeah.
So
It's actually a Dominic Daphne transferred to Illinois State like 5 years ago, I want to say, and like didn't pan out at Iowa. Only played special teams, blocked a punt against Penn State in 2018. Made the NFL as like a wham back tight end, and he looks just like Woods. Like if Woods can put on like 20 pounds and kind of a dense 6'2" build, like Lester's seen this build before. It's kind of that wham back that can insert behind the offensive line and kick out DNs, and then you're athletic enough to still go out and run a pass route. So I think Woods has a future at the wham back, kind of second tight end, or he can play receiver and look like a Brandon Smith. I think Woods is definitely close to.
Well, a lot of
both of them, honestly.
comps have been Noah Fant for Mason Woods is a lot of what I've heard, but
He can really move.
yeah.
He's got a very good lateral ability too. That's what made me think about defense with him. Like it's odd that you can say, oh, it's gonna be a wham back tight end, but you could also play him at safety.
Yeah.
Like you can easily play him at strong safety and he'd look fine.
Yeah, it's kind of a
But yeah.
do everything guy. Oh, so I didn't draft, but
Well, you took Meyer.
Didn't you?
Yeah.
I took Meyer.
Yeah.
I did take Meyer. Who's up then?
And
You?
I think Eliot's up. Right?
Didn't he just draft?
I just took Eli.
Don't
This
you go
is it.
twice?
I go twice. Yeah.
Yes,
So
you
I
Yeah,
had Meyer
so-
and I get another one.
Yes. And this is this 10?
I think so. Yeah. Then we can just do
Okay.
we can do free for all after that.
Yeah.
Sure.
This is tough. I'm in between 2. I'm going to go Jacob Wallace. I just think I love the basketball background. And DeMatha, that's where Hunter Dickinson played. It's like a legendary program. He was second in minutes on the team, averaged 5 rebounds as a point guard. Was like leading rebounder as a point guard. And
Had an offer from Siena.
did he?
Yep.
Yeah.
Basketball. Yep.
Yeah. So
I like 5'10" too, 5'11".
Yeah.
I just like that basketball background for corner. I think Micah Hyde was another basketball player. It's like that multi-sport athlete that Phil loves. And something about his film too, it just shows like really good ball skills. It doesn't have the playmaking that you'd like to see other than punt returns, but there's something about cornerback play with the dual sport athlete under Phil. And he came from, a really good conference as well. Like he's going to be playing against high level players in high school. And is that going to reflect in film that you're going to have, 10 incredible plays on it? So I think it's like a long shot. This guy could start in 2 to 3 years, so definitely could see it. Just depends on how he develops and if he can put on weight and be as physical as he needs to be to play the cornerback position.
If he didn't end up at Iowa, he would have been like Mac, like G5. And I could have seen this guy being a transfer up in 2-3 years. Like you mentioned, the athleticism is definitely there for basketball, the explosiveness. He's a 2-star on Rivals, and I think that's kind of BS. I
think his composite's like get a lot higher.
Is it? Okay, yeah. But a guy that very much flew under the radar that Phil nabbed late, and that's usually a pretty good sign. Phil was grabbing you late.
Yeah, I heard that story before.
Right.
I think the biggest thing with him is just his timing. Like he always seemed to be in phase, and then it's so important to have that last moment timing at cornerback where you're getting your hand in late. And he reminds me a little bit of Des King in that way. Kind of a similar sized guy, not going to be a super big burner at the top of the route, so likely would end up maybe at the nickel if he ever made the NFL. But concern is size. If we mentioned earlier with corner play, you really want a guy at 6'1", 6 foot, 205 here playing the system. He kind of falls in that same realm of Deshaun Lee, Terry Roberts, guys who are really good athletes, but eventually when it comes time, it's like, can you get off the receiver block and make a play in the flats? And if you can't do that, then not going to start.
Yeah.
Who is the other one you were considering?
Terrence Smith.
Fair enough.
He has only one like incredible play. It's like this out and up where he hits full speed, and you're like, 6'3", and it's like looks like Randy Moss. But then the rest of the film, he's just not adept at route running, and he's not playing full speed all the time. But when he does play full speed, it looks like he could do it. And he just got 3 bodies ahead of him: Bowie, Howard, and RVZ, who are all going to be more developed, and 3 guys at the X position that he'll be playing.
Yeah, he is a guy that, he played basketball too. That's a green flag as far as being an X.
100%.
And like you mentioned, when it's there, it's there. But is it there all the time? And I mean, there is just, who would have thought we'd say this, but like a bevy of wide receivers right now. So him seeing time, if he was a class of 24, he'd be part of the rotation, or class of 23, he'd be part of the rotation. But just wasn't there. If things click, he could be really good. I mean, him and RVZ on the field at the same time could be really,
with
really
Woods
good.
too, he can really throw some size.
Yeah,
that's why I keep on thinking about 2 or 3 years down the road in Lester's system. That extended edge where you just throw out 3 receivers who are all 6'2" to 6'3", strength, can get over the top of you. You almost play like a rendition of high school offense where you're just trying to get guys over the middle, who have height, and you can make easy passes. And then you can really, press the edges and block well. You can do those crackbacks on safeties. And it's going to be a really fun room to see develop as you get these, like, just a bevy of X receivers. You haven't had X receivers in forever. Now you're going to have 4 or 5 of them on the team.
Yeah.
For him, I think the basketball background makes a lot of sense, though, because real natural catcher of the ball. He doesn't seem to ever fight it. And then it just looks like he's playing in slow motion at the time. It's just going to be time for him to develop. I think in 3 or 4 years, definitely possible that he's a high-level Big Ten player. But, guys ahead of him and just where he's at from a route running perspective. Route running is one of those things you can't just pick up in a year. If you're not a natural at it, you have been doing it a long time, it's going to take some time to get to that really high level where he's going to be good.
Didn't produce much as a senior, but I mean, all the schools were like, "Oh, he's playing college ball,"
Yeah,
be all over him. So numbers were much better as a junior once he was coming onto the scene. But he was actually considering focusing full time on basketball early on in his high school career.
It's a really good sign.
His coach Eimer, was like, "Yeah, you should stick around." So, yeah. I'm curious as to what you guys think on Drew McPherson.
I think tweener. I just don't see safety, and I mean I could see a Leo, but there's a couple times where he's tracking the ball deep. It doesn't look natural with his back to the ball. That over the head play. That's very common for like that Leo guy to be a mover. And then if he's going to end up at linebacker, there's the 10 guys we talked about earlier, where it's like unless you are the best athlete in your likely NFL, it's going to take a long time to break through. I think he's the quintessential Iowa player though. Like plays hard, has good speed, tackles, like hits hard. But I just don't see it when it comes to who he has to match up with. Maybe a couple of years ago before this room was so developed, but
yeah. I think free safety is where we'll see him at. I think it just
you think he ends up at safety?
Yeah. Okay. I think that's the.
I think he's more like an.
That's the vision.
That's the vision.
Really?
That's where he was recruited at, and there's just not safety film out there right now.
It's just running back and receiver.
And that's just, it's a hard position to, pick. And I view him as 3 or 4 years down the line. Free safety.
He's a
if
project.
he starts knocking on the door, 2 deeps, I could see that. But it's going to be at the free safety position, not strong safety or anything else.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was my thinking too. I mean,
Free safety.
he was going to be G5, FCS, running back, receiver, and then Phil got his eyes on him. I'm imagining there were some conversations with him and Pat Fitzgerald regarding him playing at the next level. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Actually, this long time ago, I can't remember how many classes back. I want to say 2018 class. Samson Evans, when played running back at Eastern Michigan, same Chicago area, Illinois, massive
I
schools.
think he was
he's
a
playing
Loyola
in.
kid. No, he wasn't Loyola, but he was one of the giant.
No, he came in with Jenkins or whatever his name was, the
Yeah,
lineman.
Josh Jacobs.
No, not Josh, but yeah, another center, but same prospect, high level player at that high. I think you want to kind of create a feeder school as well. You want to bring as many kids as you can. Obviously,
Loyola Academy I think they've won 3 straight AA titles in Chicago.
Wow.
2 or 3. Ryan Fitzgerald at quarterback, if you're wondering.
Exactly.
He's walking on at Iowa,
Yeah.
for those that weren't aware, which I'd be surprised if people who are listening to this were not aware of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this late into it too. They're like, we know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Allgaier is another one that is interesting. Played a lot of defensive line there in St. Louis. Has a ton of familial connections to Iowa.
Oh, yes.
Ken Allgaier, his cousin Ken's son. Ken is his uncle. His cousin Nick Allgaier was a pitcher for the baseball team. Family friend Matt Markway played tight end for Iowa in the 90s. And his defensive line coach, Mike Wells, was a Hawkeye defensive lineman from 1989 to 1993.
Wow. So he was coming.
Yeah, that was pretty easy to tell too. Really big frame. You see him in person. I've seen him on visits. I don't really worry about when commits visit because it's not that big of a deal. But when he was walking by, it's just like, holy crap, that's a big dude. And like you see the frame, you see the physicality on defense, and it could translate. He played right tackle. That's where I would imagine he'll play at the next level too.
Definitely.
Another early enrollee. I haven't heard much about, but you can see it.
Yeah. And great offer list.
Yep.
And I think that's always important. You're seeing Michigan State and Wisconsin step in and other major schools.
Tackle is just a really difficult position to evaluate too at
Yeah.
that size because
And junior year film. If you had senior year film, maybe we're drafting the top 10. It's just sometimes when there's only junior film out there for offensive line, that junior to senior year jump is huge. Strength and athleticism. So
Yep.
definitely could see him, in 3rd year, 4th year playing guard or tackle.
You know who we haven't talked about?
Jimmy.
Jimmy Sullivan, the quarterback.
Yeah.
So another guy who's enrolled early, man, he looked uncomfortable in the open spring practice. He was a freshman quarterback, still learning the offense. He went out there and happy feet a little bit, but once he was matched up with the other 1st and 2nd year guys, very much in control, very composed, very poised. I like Jimmy a lot. I don't know. Have you guys heard his story from high school?
Mm-mm.
So I think he's from Fort Wayne. Started his high school career at a rival across town. Ends up transferring to Carroll, but he transferred to Carroll. Their starting quarterback, who was 2 years older than him, diagnosed with leukemia, passes away 2 days later.
Whoa.
Jimmy transfers. They were friends. Jimmy transfers over, barely gets all the paperwork filled out in time, takes over, leads them to the state championship. He got hurt in the state finals and they lost. But very, very much a quarterback. You can tell talking to him. Very, very composed, very, very confident in himself. And he committed to Iowa before Tim Lester was hired. And when Brian was gone on the way outs. Throws a much tighter ball. The quarterback recruiting in the years prior to Jimmy was basically like, you're a quarterback and you want to play? Come on.
Are you sure?
You got 3 stars? We'll sign you.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Right. And Jimmy isn't one of those. I mean, I think we may have talked about him a little bit, but Tim went to watch him throw this last spring to determine if he was like, this is a guy who committed to Iowa before me, and looked like a kid in a candy store when he took a picture with Jimmy and everything. And he's not a dual threat quarterback, right? But he's a quarterback that can run, and he can run the RPO. And if you give him green grass in front of him, he's going to make a play, right? So I mean, he's not a 4-star. He doesn't have wild arm talent, right? But I went out and saw him in Indiana this last year, and there was a play. I should have watched it before I came in, but under pressure, rolls right, throws it across his body to the opposite corner of the end zone, and his receiver goes up and gets it. That was a hell of a throw. So I'm not in a position where I was comfortable to take him in the top 10 with some of these other guys, and also given the state of the quarterback room, you just went out and got Jeremy Hecklinski, who's got 4 years of eligibility left. You've got Cash Herrera in the 26 class where they were looking at adding 2 26s. I mean, they had Peyton Falzone on campus. So it's just not a scenario where, you watch him in the spring practice, it's like, oh, this guy's going to play, right? There's going to be competition. But I'm a believer in Jimmy Sullivan. Knowing his story makes it a little easier because to do that as a high schooler is really impressive. Yeah. So that's where I'm at with Jimmy.
Yeah, I think it's a QB that can develop under Lester too. I mean, he gets a start from his first spring practice before he even should be on campus, and I think that's such an advantage. And I think Lester, if you have enough talent, you're athletic enough, he can develop anybody into someone that could start. We had our 4-string quarterback moving the ball in key moments during the season. So I think it's more of a belief in Lester than anybody. And I think Jimmy's got enough where it's like, if we had to start him in 3 years from now, it's not going to be a situation where it's Deacon Hill out there.
No, I think he's a guy.
That's not a high bar. But.
Yeah. I think he's a guy that fits into what Lester can call a game around him. Like Lester doesn't require you to have a strong arm outside the numbers. Like it's certainly a like to have, but with the added athleticism, you think of him in the boot game, RPO, read option. Lester does a really good job of those little games. So I think if you got into like an emergency situation in a couple of years, he would be a great number 2 quarterback if you can develop and hold on to him. I still think how the quarterback rooms are in Power 5, especially Big Ten football, you're just going to be constantly bringing in
transfers,
hired guns every year. And unless you're a guy that's a bona fide developed quarterback out of high school that they spend a lot of time invested in, they're likely just going to bring in a guy to compete against you. And I think we're going to see that for quite a while under Iowa.
And in my notes too, I'm a big Cash guy.
Yeah,
dude
Cash
can
is good.
spin it.
Yeah,
like there's been no QB film that watch where you're like, you turn it on, you're like, oh, that guy actually's got a motion and like wrist flick and everything. Like it looks like it should. It just the athleticism there is interesting, but man, he can absolutely rip the ball.
Tim Lester compared his footwork to Aaron Rodgers when they had him on campus for camp. Cash is probably one of the better quarterback recruits they've had in quite a while.
Bison Stanley, in just terms of natural throwing the ball.
Yeah, that's what I remember the tape was like. It's like when you watch Stanley for the first time in high school, you're like, okay, well, every throw is in the bag.
Yeah.
That's how it's going to be a very similar game, though. It's like, well, how much is this athleticism holding back? It might not.
Yeah.
It might just be able to play.
The thing about that quarterback room is, not to belabor the point, is you got Hank Brown, 3 years of eligibility left. Jeremy Hecklinski, 4 years of eligibility left. Jimmy Sullivan, 4 years of eligibility left. Cash Herrera coming in. Are they going to get another 26 quarterback? I'm kind of doubtful they do now because it's a little bit later in the process. Quarterbacks commit early. And you've just got Hecklinski to replace James Rezar, who is still with the team, by the way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Moda, number 7th overall draft pick in 2023. Connor called it. Says they got him at receiver. He's going to move to DB in 2 years. He says they're lying to him right now. They got him on the campus because he's a receiver.
But we just saw the tackling ability of him.
He's sick.
Yeah.
You guys nailed Zach Lutler, by the way.
Yeah. We're pumped on that.
Nailed it. I mean, that trio of him and Entringer and Wampa this year is going to be fun. There's just bringing in Hutkins was huge because there's just so little depth there.
I really like Kel Clark. I think it's how you say it.
Yeah,
Kalaric. He made a couple of splash plays in the spring game where you're starting to see him put it together, but I think he just seemed like a guy that had the athleticism right from the start, and he got into the 2 deeps. I think he was a redshirt freshman, so that's just rare for a walk-on safety. I think he's in a decent emergency position, but then you go behind him, it's like,
oh, he knows.
Yeah. I wrote about
Solante probably.
Yeah. I wrote about Kalaric in my 6 takeaways from the spring game. And it's like he really popped. He had that one pick in the end zone and then dove in front of KJ Parker.
Yeah, that was a really nice play.
That was a really nice play. Who, by the way, another one you guys nailed, KJ Parker. He's going to play this year.
You just need to put weight on.
It's just crazy though, because you think of the senior wide receivers. You go Gill, Anderson, and Phillips. Weegen, 4 seniors,
Mhm.
all expected.
It's
to get
just
time.
so many names. I've never just like it's always like the classic bunch of dudes talking ball, just listing names.
Yeah, right.
It's like that's like the first time we can
Yeah.
go into a receiver. I'm like, oh, Seth Anderson. Like we
Right.
didn't name Seth Anderson.
Yeah.
It's like you do that in the receiver room at Iowa. That is so rare. Like
That's just a testament to Lester's likability. I
Yes.
think, like
Yeah.
keeping guys around. Also, this shift from tight end usage where everything in the passing game was, okay, how do we create as much space for our tight ends to operate in that stick game, and then a bunch of renditions off that. Now with this new condensed set, talked about it a million times, but you've really replaced that X receiver with your tight end, where you're trying to get your X receiver to 10 yards quickly over the middle. He can be that guy, the QB can see, but he can get in and out a lot faster than a tight end would be able to do. And I think that's where you're seeing these X receivers like, I have a spot in this game. It's not because previously under Brian, the higher targets for receivers were always slot guys, because again, he was playing a space game, and he couldn't use an X receiver effectively. He had Amir Smith-Marset, 45 catches his senior year?
no. It was
6-12.
2020, but
Oh,
it was
I'd say.
2019. He had
2019, he didn't have.
He should have had a huge year.
Yeah. 2020
stand.
obviously went off. But.
Yeah. The worst quote from the Lester interview was about motion. How the receivers didn't know how to use motion to identify coverage, and I was like, ooh. Like, that is maybe the worst soundbite that came out of the Brian Ferentz era.
Right. Very telling. And they ran like motion on 6% of plays from the year prior. It's like,
He probably doesn't know why he's doing motion. Then.
Yeah.
If you don't,
yeah.
and it's such an easy thing
To
to
keep it
utilize
simple,
where-
stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. But motion's not as useful when you're playing spread out as well. I'll say that much, because it takes forever to guys to cross formation. But still, it's like you should always be doing a quick zig to see if you got a nickel cornerback following you around. And
you guys haven't talked about Gronowski yet, have you?
no. Oh, we did a little bit, but in our
Off-season pod.
pod.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So being a UNI grad, covered UNI, seen the dude annihilate the Panthers a bunch of times. It's obviously a different level, but he's got the physical makeup, and I mean, it's different than the last quarterback that came in in demeanor and which we could talk about some of that stuff.
We're pretty late in the
Late
podcast.
spikes.
I think
Yeah,
everyone
yeah, yeah. We
everyone
can let it
who's
fly. We can
listening
let it-
still is like, we'll keep our mouth shut.
It's different for that reason, and that is huge to me. He knows he's got to earn it. He knows he's got to earn the respect. He's got to earn the starting job. Even though right now through the spring, Lester said they're effectively running plays with Hank Brown is the one, but they're kind of meeting after plays and saying, okay, what would you have done there, Mark? So he's getting a ton of mental reps. What are your expectations for him in this year? Because he's a different athlete. He ran the ball a lot at South Dakota State. He is coming off that injury, so he didn't really get the spring. But I mean,
Somebody 4 years of experience,
Right.
hopefully can rely on that. But still, we're so scared. It's like the same story almost.
PTSD.
Yeah.
I am, because of what I've seen, because of the pedigree of winning so much at South Dakota State. It's hard for me to not believe, but at the same time, I've heard some people say like Gronowski was the reason that they won, which he was not. I mean, you look at they had dudes. How many of those guys have transferred up? I mean, they had the Yankee brothers. They had the guy
Tucker Kraft.
Tucker Kraft. They have had Isaiah Davis ran through the UNI defense in ways that nobody else did. I mean, that was one of the better UNI defenses when I was covering them. And I mean, and then you look at a guy like Hawthorne, who Aaron Graves just told me in terms of the physical tools reminds him of Ontario Thompson, who was a freak. And so he was not the reason that they won national titles, but he's still really damn good. I mean,
There's a reason he was a borderline NFL draft pick.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Right.
I think that's what he is. I think he's just a late round NFL draft pick. You take a
because he's
flyer on because
a good dude, and he
physical.
looks like an NFL quarterback.
And that's what I think you broke it down perfectly about. He wasn't the reason why they were incredible, but he still won Player of the Year
right
at the FCS level. But I still remember watching
excuse me, sorry,
their quarterfinal game, and they're popping up stats about South Dakota State. It's like #1 defense in the country, #2 rush game in the country. I'm like, well, this is kind of like playing for Michigan. It's kind of like playing for Ohio State. You got an in route from a receiver. He's got 3 yards of space.
You got a clean pocket.
You're rushing for 7 yards. Defensive line, they're worried about the rush every time. So any play action, your DNs aren't getting upfield. Your receivers are open. You're kind of on pace. You're on this flow of like, we are better than these guys, and now I got to make the plays. I got to play point guard. I think
You can't fault him for having a good team, though.
Yeah,
You
but
know, it's like you have to look at like what's his talent level.
But he's good talent level.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think he does what we want him to do. He's gonna be able to pick up first downs on third down with his legs. We're gonna be able to run him in short yards, which is actually so critical of running. You can trust him to pick up 1 yard and 2 yards on third and short.
And I would trust him in those situations more than I did Brendan Sullivan.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
His decision making is
But he knows how to
championship
protect
level.
himself too.
Yep.
He's a great off platform. He'll see a guy about to strike him. He can get it, dip down his shoulder, make sure he doesn't take big hits.
Smart guy.
Again, like if we're getting what Lester did such a good job of, even in the Missouri game, was keeping us on schedule. If he wanted to throw for 3 or 4 yards, he could get a guy open. That was Brian's biggest critique, was just, okay, we're going to be a pace and space team, but we can't complete a 3-yard pass. Lester does a really good job through scheme and movement. If he wants to go for 3, he can get 3.
Mm-hmm.
And now you mix in, the returning O-line, and all he's going to have to do is just be that smart, intelligent QB, gets you in the right plays, has, not really what you consider like a prototypical NFL arm. I think you're going to have, moments where he's going to be better in, what Lester's going to ask him to do is he's certainly be capable of, but I think just that litany of experience and hopefully not having panic moments is going to be where he really shines through.
And I think the
keep you on schedule.
Yeah, the 15-yard deep end is where he's going to live. And that's what he threw a lot at South Dakota State. I think why I'm just hesitant not to give him this like golden stamp of approval, he's going to be unreal, he's going to be all Big Ten, is because we have to play Oregon and Penn State. And those teams are going to roll in with $10 million rosters and cornerbacks that are going to be at extremely high level. And so now your pass rush, he's got 2 DNs that are going to be playing the NFL, bearing down on him. He's going to be in 3rd and 7, and he's going to have receivers that are getting blanketed. It's a much different aspect than playing at South Dakota State. He could do it. It could be like Purdy, where you can't really see it until he actually is accurate and he's timed up and he's confident. He doesn't lose his mojo through the game. If he can do that, he can be great. But that's such a hard thing to see in film. If you don't have to fit windows, can he fit windows? And the window will be a much different window this year.
Well, I think that what I really liked out of him, and I think Lester's, the key of his scheme is this late developing in route. Any pro style, there's always this arcing route from your outside receiver at 10 yards. You obviously have to have an O-line that's holding up at the moment. You're not going to be able to use it when people are pressuring you. But it requires you to survive the pocket long enough, keep your eyes downfield, and it's always open against zone schemes.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw him do really well is just have those moments where he has D-tackle pressure. He moves a little bit to the left, keeps his feet, and then is able to make that throw over the middle. And granted, it's a different level of talent he's playing, but that little survival games is what we didn't see from Sullivan. Sullivan was a one-read guy who then could use his athleticism, but
Eyes down.
He's going to play QB the way you want him to play QB in this system. I think Lester's going to trust him to go through progressions. Like, I'll leave, my third read's going to be where you probably want to go, but you can survive and then make the throw. And I think that's where we could actually have a very competent offense as a QB who understands where's my last read at and I can make it.
He's a really high floor. That's how I'd wrap it up.
Yeah.
Just extremely high floor.
This is probably the best that Iowa could do out of the portal with a quarterback. I mean, obviously
100%.
they had Bo Pribula on campus, but that's a little bit different of a situation. Gronowski, when I keep going back to the demeanor because it's so different to have that paired with actual talent and with a guy who has done it. Because great guys in the Iowa locker room. Production at quarterback, When you look at Gronowski, you've seen both. You've seen him do it. I would have, I'm sure a bunch of fans feel, and I'm sure you guys feel too, would feel much more comfortable if he was there for the spring and not rehabbing from surgery. But you got the cards that you're dealt, right? And additionally, you're in a much better situation in terms of your quarterback room than you've been for a long time. You can play Hank Brown and win games. I mean, they played Deacon Hill in one game. So exactly.
Hank Brown can win you games, though. He's got the arm talent to keep you alive. You could play a really safe game with him, too. Everything could be outside the numbers. And that's what I always look for a backup QB is hopefully he just has the D1 pedigree where it's okay, we're going to come out and protect you. And you can throw passes that, can protect yourself. Yeah. I think that's a good spot to end.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Works for me.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Great time, man.
Really appreciate it.
For sure.
Yep. Go Hawks. That's how we always end it. Now we got to do 2 fist bumps. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks.